in beams. Okay, so specifically shear stress in thin wall beams. So there is a difference between thick wall and thin wall. So that will discuss in the end of the class. So then we'll find the horizontal shear acting in a beam, and then we'll calculate those shear stresses acting in the beam. So here we have the transverse cross section of the beam. X-axis is the longitudinal axis, and Y and Z are the transverse axis. Okay, so on this cross section, we can identify a small elemental area dA, and there are normal stress. There is normal stress sigma x and shear stresses tau xy and tau xg. So and here y-axis is the plane of vertical symmetry. That means this area is symmetric with respect to the y-axis. So the resultant of all these stresses, internal stresses, can be shown as two quantities. One is the vertical shear force V, and it is acting in the downward direction, and the other one is the bending moment M. So we are identifying the symmetry plane, and then there we are showing those shear force and the bending moment. So we can write the equations relating these internal stresses with the resultant shear and the resultant bending moment. So we have done that for pure bending moment. So in the pure bending moment case, the shear force V is 0, and we have only M value. Okay, so for that case, we have done the analysis. In this case, what is happening is we have the shear force V acting in the downward direction. So if you do the equilibrium in the x direction, so we have sigma x dA, and that integral, there is no normal force, so integral sigma x dA is 0. Similarly, we can find the moment produced by this sigma x dA, that is the normal force about normal stress about the y-axis. So it will be sigma x dA into the z coordinate. So again, we don't have any bending moment about y direction. So sigma x dA into z is 0. And we can find the bending moment about the z axis. In this case, it is plus m. So sigma x dA will produce a clockwise moment. So we have to write minus the momentum is y coordinate, so minus y into sigma x dA, that is equal to plus m. So we have done this previously, and then we have our bending moment about the x-axis. So bending moment about which axis? I think this is about x-axis, or tau x times yeah, bending moment about the x-axis. So it will be tau xy dA into tau xg dA into the z y coordinate, that will be in the along x plus x direction, and tau xy dA into the z coordinate, that will be in the negative x direction. So we have this equation tau xz dy minus tau xy daz, that is equal to 0. And we have another two more equations, which is the force equilibrium along the x direction, along the y direction, and force equilibrium along the z direction. So force equilibrium along y direction will give integral tau xy dA, and that is equal to minus v, because both are in the opposite direction, so we have to write minus v. And here integral tau xg dA is 0. Okay, so okay, yeah. So although here tau xg dA is 0, that means the shear stress in the z direction is 0. Integral is 0, but actual value of tau xg need not be 0 everywhere. It may be symmetric. Or in that way, tau xg need not be 0 at every point in the beam. Okay. So our interest will be now this shear stress tau xy. Okay, tau xy, integral tau xy dy is minus v. So we are interested in this transverse vertical shear stress. So what we will do, this is the plane of symmetry or the line of symmetry for this cross section, and on this line of symmetry we will identify a small cubic element. Okay, so the zoomed in figure of this cubic element is shown here. This is in the zoomed in figure. So at this cross section, tau xg is 0. Why it is 0, I currently don't know, but I think because this side and the to the left of plus g axis and minus g axis, probably there can be some shear stress tau xg, but at that point it is 0. Maybe it's going from minus to plus, maybe at that point it will be 0. Okay, so tau xg at this case is 0. So this is our stress element on the stress element, and we have the vertical shearing stress acting in the downward direction. We have the normal stress sigma x, and because there is a vertical shearing stress, to balance it on the horizontal plane, there will be a horizontal shearing stress. So that horizontal shearing stress will act in the towards the leftward direction, and we denote that by tau yx. So y represents the area normal. So the normal to the area is along y-axis. So tau y, x represents the direction. So we are having in the negative direction. So it's tau yx, and this is the horizontal shearing stress. So whenever there is this vertical shearing stress acting on this transverse vertical plane, there is a corresponding horizontal shear stress which is developed, which will balance this vertical shearing stress. Okay, so longitudinal shear stress must exist in any beam subjected to transverse loading. So this is the main conclusion. I think I had done a small example long time back where we had a bolt which was subjected to horizontal shear, and then we showed that because of the horizontal shear there is also vertical shear acting in the cross section of the bolt. So similar thing we can say here, because there is a vertical shear acting on that vertical plane, there will be a horizontal shear which is acting along the longitudinal axis of the beam. Okay, so that longitudinal axis is this direction, and we have that horizontal shear. Okay, so this is very important to understand, and we know that for force balance to happen, tau yx is equal to tau xy for force balance and also the moment equilibrium to happen. And if you see the left face and the bottom face, we have these shear stresses also. Those same shear stress will be there, which will balance out, so that entire thing will be in equilibrium. So we'll discuss more about this tau yx and all. So here what we have is a set of beams. It's a cantilever beam. It is supported fixed at one end and it is free at another end. These are set of beams which are acting together, but there is no bond between the top beam, middle beam, and the center beam. There is no bond between them. Now what we will do, we will apply a load on this beam on the free end. So when we apply the load, all the three beams will bend, and we can see that there is some sliding taking place. And say if you take the top beam and the middle beam has slided more compared to the top beam, and here the bottommost beam has slided very more than the middle beam. Okay, so all these planks will slide with respect to each other. So because of this applied transverse load, there is some sliding taking place between these beams. So this is physically, it means that there is some movement at the interface of the two beams. So along the horizontal, if you take that horizontal plane, there is some interfacial movement which is happening, okay, between the two surfaces. So there is some kind of shear which will happen, but here the beam is, there's no restraint provided on the beam, so the shear force developed will be 0. Okay, so the main take home point is that when there is a vertical load acting downward, means transverse load, there will be some sliding taking place between the surfaces. And here the beam is subjected to pure bending. So under pure bending, what will happen? Each beam will deflect along an arc of a circle, and there will be no sliding between any two members. Okay, so the top member and the middle member, or the middle member and the bottommost member, there is no sliding when this beam is subjected to this pure bending moment. Why it is subject to pure bending moment? Because there is M here, so to balance it there will be a M on the left end. So, and there is no shear force acting in anywhere in between, so this is a constant bending moment, and here there is no sliding taking place and there is no shear force acting in this beam. So the main thing is that whenever there is a transverse load P, there will be a sliding action. Now we are taking this homogeneous beam, means these beams are separate beams. Now we are taking one solid beam and we are subjecting it to this vertical load. Because of this, what will happen at any cross section, there will be this downward transverse shear. Okay, that is indicated by that green arrow. And to balance that, there will be this horizontal shear acting in the longitudinal direction. Okay, so there will be some tendency of the upper part of the beam to slide with respect to the lower part, but that is prevented, and there will be some shear stress acting between the top part and the between any two interfaces. Okay, so that shear stress is here shown by the red arrow. The horizontal, it acts in the longitudinal direction. So suppose if you have a beam made of timber planks, so what usually the beam can fail either by vertical shear, that means fail in the vertical direction due to shear, or it can also fail in the longitudinal direction. So usually the timber beams, they fail along the weak planes. So the weak planes which are in shear, or if they are oriented in this direction, so these timber beams can fail like this. Okay. I don't have the picture of the timber beam, but maybe show it sometime later. So here the failure is taking place in the longitudinal direction, and yeah, although there is vertical shear and also there is horizontal shear. So yeah, so we will discuss about this shear force in the horizontal direction. So what is the horizontal force acting on the plane? So here we have a simply supported beam AB. It is subjected to concentrated loads P1, P2, and there is a uniformly distributed load W. And the transverse cross section is shown here. So this transverse cross section has a vertical plane of symmetry. So this beam axis is along x-axis, and the transverse cross section, that means you are looking from the side view. So that axis, the upward axis, vertical axis is y, and the left axis is the z. So yeah, about the y-axis, this area is symmetric. Now what we do at a distance x, we cut a small cross section, and at a small distance x plus del x, we will cut another cross section. So we have two vertical cross sections, and at y distance above the neutral axis, we will cut a horizontal cross section. Okay, we will cut a horizontal cross section, so we will get a horizontal plane, and then we will look at that small segment bounded by those two vertical sections and that horizontal segment, horizontal surface. Okay, so that is what is shown here. So we have C prime, which is that vertical segment, and D prime, which is the second vertical segment. The distance between these two vertical segments is delta x, and at a distance of y1 above the neutral axis, we have cut a horizontal segment, or we have cut a horizontal surface. So there will be a corresponding horizontal surface which is represented by this line. So if you look from the side view, this area will, the transverse cross section is this one, and at a distance y1 above the neutral axis, we have this horizontal line. Okay. So our main interest is what is the horizontal shear force coming in this segment C prime D prime. So to do that, to find that horizontal shear force, we'll have to draw the free body diagram. So before drawing the free body diagram, we'll just look at this area above the neutral axis. Okay. So we are looking from the side view. and we see that D prime and C prime. It will be that area is shown here. Okay, so maybe C is here, C prime is here, D is here, D prime is here. So we have that area here, and that area we are denoting by A some tilde. So now we are doing the force balance to find out what is the horizontal shear force acting along C prime D prime, that surface. Okay. C prime D prime is actually a surface. We are just, although it is shown by a line here, it is one horizontal surface. So let's draw the free body diagram. So first thing is we'll have the normal stresses acting along that C prime. Normal stresses due to bending. So those normal stresses are shown here. The maximum normal stress will occur at the top fiber, and as you go towards the neutral axis, the normal stress will reduce. So that normal stress on the left segment is given as sigma CdA, and similarly on the right surface we have we have normal stresses, and those are represented by sigma D. So the maximum will occur at the top fiber, and as you go towards the neutral axis, it is reducing. So we have this trapezoidal kind of distribution, and we have that uniformly distributed load W, which is shown here between C and D. So on the left segment we have the shear force Vc, and on the right segment we have the downward shear force Vd. Why we are showing Vc up? Because the sign convention is like this. So on the left surface we will show V as in the upward direction, right surface positive V is shown in the downward direction. Okay, so our main interest is what is the horizontal shear delta H acting at that surface. So to that delta H is shown by this by this arrow in the rightward direction, and we want to find what is delta H. So we will do a force balance in the x direction. So all the forces acting in the positive x direction we will find out and balance it with the force acting in the negative direction. So sigma fx is 0. So delta H plus we have sigma c acting in the positive direction and sigma d acting in the negative direction. So sigma c minus sigma d times the area. So actually this line represents one area, and also this line also represents that area. So we are integrating sigma c minus sigma d over the dA element. dA element represents area with respect to this shaded portion. Okay, so somewhere here we can take a small dA, and we can find the sigma c and sigma d corresponding to that area, and we can do the integration and find out the total difference in forces between the left edge and the right edge. So what we can do then, we can send sigma c minus sigma d to the right. So we'll get delta H is integral over that shaded area A tilde sigma d minus sigma c dA. So we have the normal stress that can be written in terms of bending moment using the flexure formula. So sigma is equal to my by I. So on the right section there is md bending moment, and on the left section there is mc bending moment. So we can write it as mdy by I minus mcy by I times dA. So here we can take out md minus mc common out of the integral. So md minus mc by I integral y dA. So what is this y dA? So if you look carefully, YDA represents the first moment of that shaded area about the neutral axis. Okay, so we want to find horizontal shear at that location. So what we will do, we will consider area above that location, and that is the shaded area, and we find the first moment of this area above the neutral axis. So that we represent that first moment of area by this notation Q. Okay, so Q is equal to integral that shaded area y dA. So what is this y dA with respect to neutral axis? So we can find the centroid of this area, and let's call that centroid as y1 A tilde, and you can find the total area, let's call that as A tilde. So Q value will be y1 A tilde times A tilde. So the distance of the centroid from the neutral axis into the shaded area, that is the Q value. Or you can do an integration where you will integrate from y1 to c1, the top fiber, and you find this integral y dA. So the first moment of area integral y dA, we replace this term with Q. So we will get the horizontal shear force delta H is equal to md minus mc, that is the change in bending moment over that segment delta x by I into Q. So this is one expression. What we can do, the change in bending moment we can relate with the area under the shear force diagram. So we have the relation md minus mc is the change in bending moment. So we can write it as dm by dx times del x. So this is the slope of the bending moment diagram. So slope is equal to the shear force. So we can have md minus change in bending moment as shear force times delta x. So delta m is v delta x. And what we can do, this md minus mc we can replace with v delta x. So we get the horizontal shear force acting on that surface. This horizontal shear force acts in the longitudinal direction, and delta h is equal to v delta x q by I. So what we can do is, here the horizontal shear force is dependent on the length of the segment. So we can make it independent of the length of segment by defining one quantity called defining that quantity as like this. So horizontal shear per unit length. So if we define horizontal shear per unit length means we divide delta h by delta x. So we get delta h by delta x is equal to vq by I. Okay, and we can write this horizontal shear per unit length by another term called small q, and this small q is called the shear flow. So this shear flow is dependent on the shear force acting at that cross section q, the first moment of area of the area above y is equal to y1 with respect to the neutral axis, and I is the total moment of inertia of the entire cross section. So what we have done here is we have calculated the horizontal shear force acting on that surface in the which is acting in the longitudinal direction, and then we found the shear flow, which is the delta h by the length of the segment delta x. So that shear flow is small q, and that small q is dependent on the applied shear and also on the q value and also on the total moment of inertia I. So that is what we have done in this derivation. So we have defined what is shear flow, which is the horizontal shear per unit length. So when you say horizontal shear, it is the shear acting in the longitudinal direction on that surface located at y is equal to y1 above the neutral axis. So we can discuss more about that here. So we have the beam cross section that delta x, this length is delta x, and this is the transverse cross section of the beam. So we have analyzed the top part of the beam, and we have found the horizontal shear force acting in the bottom face of this top part, and that is delta h. Now if we analyze this portion, the bottom portion of the beam, then there will be some shear force acting here, and that shear force will be equal and opposite in direction to this shear force. Suppose if you represent the shear force as delta h prime, so for force balance delta h plus delta h prime, internal force balance delta h plus delta h prime should be 0. So we'll get delta h prime is minus delta h, and this delta h actually will be equal, will be opposite in direction to this delta h. So we can do an analysis of this cross section means by taking the bottom part of the segment, and we can do a similar analysis. Previously we have done analysis for the top segment. We can do analysis for the bottom segment. So here again, this line represents actually an area. That area is this green color origin top area. Okay, this shown by this green color, and we are looking from the side view. So this C prime D prime is actually represents an area. So what we have, we are looking at this segment. Okay, so from this side view we are looking. So we have C prime C, and I think it should be C double prime. I written D, C and D. It should be C double prime and D double prime. Okay, so we have that delta H prime, and if you look at the transverse cross section, our area will be this shaded portion, and that will denote by A prime tilde. And for this A prime tilde, we have again a first moment of area with respect to neutral axis, and that we denote by Q A prime tilde. Yeah, so what we can do, we can find the centroid of this entire area, locate the centroid, and then with respect to the neutral axis, then multiply area times that distance of the centroid from the neutral axis. So we'll get the QA prime tilde. So we can, if you do the similar analysis, we'll get a relation between that horizontal shear force delta H prime and the applied vertical shear and q a prime I moment of inertia and delta x. So what is happening here? Instead of q a prime, we are having q a tilde. We have q a prime tilde, and we already know that delta h is equal to minus delta h prime. So what it means is q a tilde is equal to minus q a prime tilde. That means the first moment of area of this red color portion above the neutral axis is negative of the first moment of area of this green color portion with respect to the neutral axis. So which is okay. Why it is okay? So if you send this qa prime tilde to the left hand side, we get qa tilde plus qa prime tilde. So what it is integral yda of the entire cross section above the neutral axis. So which is true. Yda integral yda is 0 is okay. So yeah, so what effectively it means is that the qa tilde is negative of q a prime tilde. Okay, so the top area first moment with respect to the neutral axis is equal to the bottom area, which is the shaded area above the neutral axis, which is a negative value. Both will balance out so that the y coordinate will go to 0. So that is what we have here. So let's look at what will happen to q value as we move that section, horizontal section, towards the neutral axis. So here we have the horizontal, we cut a cross section at distance y1 which is greater than 0, and we have this shaded area, and for this shaded area we have q greater than 0. As we move still further downward, and suppose we move to the neutral axis, so then we'll reach the maximum value of q. Okay, so at that point we'll get the maximum shear flow. And if you move further down, what will happen is above the neutral axis there will be positive contribution, and below the neutral axis there will be negative contribution. So again shear q value will start to decrease, and when you reach this line, when you reach y1 is equal to minus c2, then this positive and negative value will balance out and they will be 0. So we'll get a q value of 0. Okay, so the maximum value will occur when y1 is 0. When you consider entire area above the neutral axis, we'll get the maximum value for q. Okay, so and that will be the place where we'll get the maximum shear flow. So q value will be, small q will be maximum at that location of neutral axis. So and that will be v q by I. Okay, so this is regarding the variation of q with respect to the location of that horizontal segment. We'll do a very simple example, and where we'll apply that shear flow formula. So I'll take a small break and come back. Okay, so let's look at this simple example where we'll see what is how the shear flow is taking place. So what is this cross? We have what we have here is we have wooden planks of 200 by 100 meter cross 20 millimeter by 100 millimeter cross section. So the wooden planks of certain length, and the cross section area is this much, 20 by 100. And what we are doing is we are joining 3 wooden planks of these dimensions. So how are we joining them? We are joining them in the form of this I-shaped beam. So this is the cross section of this beam, and if you the beam will move, means you are seeing from the side view, so you will have this I-shaped cross section. And how are we joining these wooden planks? We are joining them with the help of nails. So this nail will we are hitting that nail with the hammer, and this plank and this plank we are joining them. So this is one nail here, and we are joining this plank and the bottommost plank by another nail, and these nails are at a spacing of 25 millimeters. And what is happening, the beam is subjected to some loads, and at certain it is subjected to some shear force. Shear force is coming on the beam, and that shear force is given as 500 Newton. So we are asked to find what is the this vertical shear. Okay, this is the vertical shear V, which is 500 Newton. We are asked to find what is the shear which is coming on this nail or on this nail. So to find that, if you see here, this nail, it is connecting this beam and this beam. Okay, so there will be some horizontal shear acting at the interface of these two beams, interface of these two two planks. So we need to find what is that shear force which is acting at that interface, because without this nail, slipping will occur at that interface. If there is no nail, then the two planks will slide with respect to each other under load. But because this nail is there, it is preventing that slipping to happen. And because it is preventing the slipping from happening, it is resisting some shear. And we want to find what shear this nail is resisting. So to find that how much shear the nail is resisting, we will look at the horizontal shear which is acting at that location, at this interface. So our problem will for analysis, we are interested in the horizontal shear acting at a distance y1 equal to this distance, okay, of the half of 100, which is 50. Okay, so we are looking at this what is the shear coming here. So here once we have located that we are interested in this shear coming at this horizontal segment, then our area which we have, where we have to find the Q value, is known. So that is shown by this shaded area, and this will be our A tilde, and we can find the Q value corresponding to this area. So what will be the Q value? That Q is integral pi dA for this area. So we already defined that first moment of area as location area times the centroid location of the centroid with respect to the neutral axis. So this entire area this is 100 and this is 20, so we'll get BA times H, which is 100 into 20 as the area, and location of the centroid with respect to the neutral axis. Here the neutral axis lies exactly at the center, so it will be 50 below here, below the interface. So 50 plus 10 will be 60. So the location of the centroid is 60, and we can get the Q value as A times Y1C, which is 100 into 20 into 60, which is 12 into 10 power 4 millimeter cube. Now next step is to calculate the moment of inertia of the total area. So we have to find the moment of inertia of this I section. So how do you find the moment of inertia? So what we will do, this is 100, height is what? Height is 20 plus 100 plus 20, which is 140. So what we will do is we will calculate the moment of inertia of this entire outer edge, which has dimensions 100 times 140. Okay, 100 along the width and 140 along the height. Then we will subtract the moment of inertia of this small rectangular areas. So the width of this rectangular area is given as, so this is 100 and this thickness is 20, so the remaining portion will be 80. And what is the height of the remaining portion? It will be 100. So we can subtract from the total rectangular area moment of inertia, we can subtract the moment of inertia contribution from these two rectangular areas. So that is what we are doing here. So we have 100 into 140 cube by 12, and the width of this rectangular area which we are subtracting is 80, and the height is 100. So we'll get 80 into 100 cube by 12. So the total moment of inertia will be 16.2 into 10 power 6. So because it's symmetric, we can do that. This rectangle, both the outermost rectangle and the smaller two rectangles are symmetric with respect. Their centroid are coinciding with the neutral axis. So for that reason, we can apply this formula. Otherwise, what you have to do, you have to take the moment of inertia of that top area, then this web area and the flange area separately, and we can apply the parallaxis theorem and find the I value. So for this specific case, because the neutral axis of these rectangular areas are coinciding with the neutral axis, centroid of the areas are coinciding with the neutral axis, we can apply directly this formula. So we get the I value, which is 16.2 into 10 power 6 millimeter power 4. So once we know that, we have what we can do, we can calculate the shear flow Q, which is VQ by I. So the vertical shear is 500 Newton. Q value is 12 into 10 power 4 millimeter cube. I value is 60.2 10 power 6. So we'll get something like 3.7037 Newton per millimeter. So what is the shear flow? Shear flow is the horizontal force acting per unit longitudinal length. Okay, so delta H by delta X is Q. And the spacing of the nails is given as 25 millimeters. So the horizontal shear force taken by each nail we can get by multiplying Q times with the Q times the spacing. So we'll get delta H as 3.7037 into 25. So we get 92.6 millimeter, 92.6 Newton. So that is the horizontal shear force which is being resisted by this nail at that because it is connecting this plank with that plank at that location. So at that location it is resisting a force of 92.6 Newton. Suppose if this nail is not there, what will happen? The two planks will slip with respect to each other under bending. But because these nails are provided, they will bend together in a without slipping. Okay, so and this nail will have 92.6 Newton. As a result, it will have some shear stress. You can divide by the area of the nail and get the shear stress in the nail. Okay, so this is a very simple example of the application of the shear flow. So when you say delta H, it is along the longitudinal axis of the beam. So I didn't sketch the full beam. Now, if you have the beam here, then the nails are spaced at a distance of 25 millimeters. Okay, so you can imagine that. So we'll go through some intricacies of this shearing stresses in beam here. So previously, we have discussed about the horizontal force which is acting. This is the horizontal force which is acting on that segment, and we are considering the bottom segment, and we are looking at that horizontal shear force, which is delta H. So the segment length is delta X here, and the width of the segment is T. So we can calculate what is the shear stress acting here on this top area, C D1 C prime D1 prime and D2 prime C2 prime. What is the average shear stress? So the average shear stress will be delta H by the area. So delta H we already calculated, it is VQ by I delta X, or VDX Q by I. So VDX is actually delta M Q by I. So that is what we have, delta H. And what is the area? This area is delta X times the width. Width is T, and this is the height, like that. So it will be T delta X. So what will happen? Delta X and delta X will cancel out, and we get average shear stress on that cross sectional area as VQ by IT. Okay. So this is the average shear stress acting on this area. Actual distribution of shear stress will not be uniform. Suppose if you consider the line element D1 prime, D2 prime. So let's plot what is the shear stress acting on that line element D1 prime, D2 prime. So we have that line element D1 prime, D2 prime, and on the vertical face, means in the vertical direction, we have the shear stress tau xy. So the distribution of tau xy is like this. So the maximum value will come at the edge. So at D1 prime and D2 prime, we'll have the maximum shear stress, and at the center it will be minimum. So some profile will get like this, and there will be some average stress value. We are calculating when you set that average stress value is equal to VQ by IT. Okay, so we'll have both tau max and tau minimum and tau average. And similarly, on the vertical face, on the horizontal face, we have tau yx. And again, similar stress distribution will be there because tau yx is equal to tau xy. And we have the maximum shear acting at this edges, this edge and the farther edge. And then there will be reduction in the shear stress, which will, the stress profile will be like this. So again, we'll have some tau average, tau max, and tau minimum. So what we are getting here is when it's a VQ by IT, it is a tau average. Okay, so what else we have? And what will happen to the shear stress at the top part of the beam and the bottom part of the beam? So there, the shear stress will go to 0. Why does it go to 0? Because the Q value itself is 0. Q value will go to 0. So the contribution of the transverse area, first moment of area of the transverse region will go to 0 there, and there will be there is no shear stress. Tau xy and tau xyx will be 0 there. Similarly, at the bottommost region, again we'll have Q value going to 0, and we have tau xy and tau yx both going to 0. And the shear stress will keep increasing as we move further down, and as it is a neutral axis, we'll get the maximum shear stress. But there is a small intricacy here, because we are calculating tau average as VQ by IT. Only when the width is constant, we can assume that because it is dependent on the width. So if the width is constant, then we can say that Q is maximum for y1 is 0, that is neutral axis, and then we can have the maximum shear stress, average shear stress at the neutral axis location. But here the width can vary. Suppose then we have to actually find out what is the tau average at all the locations and find the maximum value there, because tau average is dependent on the first moment of area and the width. But for uniform width, the maximum tau average will occur for the neutral axis location. Okay, so tau max average is equal to V by I, Q max by B for a beam with uniform width. Now there is some theory of elasticity. Some mathematical work has been done by mathematicians, some elasticity researchers. So what they have done, they have taken a beam of uniform width B and height h, and what they have done is they have calculated the shear stress distribution at the so they calculated the shear stress distribution at the neutral axis. Okay, so C1, C2 is the neutral axis. So the neutral axis for this rectangular cross-section area will lie exactly at half the height. So it will be h1 by 2 from the bottom base and h1 by 2 from the top. So this is the neutral axis, and here the shear stress distribution will have some maximum value at the edge, and at the center it will be minimum. So there will be tau max and tau minimum, and there will be some tau average. So people have done some research work, and they have made some small table where they have shown how the tau max and tau minimum vary with the B by H ratio. That means width by H ratio. So here width by H ratio is given as 0.25, and it is going up to 50. So when B by H is 0.25, that means the breadth of the beam is 0.25 times the height. And when B by H is 50, it means that the breadth is 50 times the height. So when you have B by H is 50, it means the beam is very wide. And when you have B by H is 0.25, it means the beam is very thin. Okay. So as the beam dimensions become goes from very wide beam to a very thin beam, what is happening is the tau max by tau average, that value is 1.008, and tau minimum by tau average is 0.996. It is decreasing. Actually, this is a very I didn't show the next part of the table, but I'm showing only these values. The tau max by tau average, that means we have the tau max here and we have the tau average. We take the ratio of that. So tau max by tau average is 1.008. That means the tau max is almost equal to tau average. Similarly, tau minimum by tau average is 0.996. So again, it is very much close to 1. So as the beam becomes thinner and thinner, the tau max and tau minimum will move towards tau average. Okay, so this line will become a straight line as the beam becomes thinner and thinner. So this is one thing we can get from that elasticity theory. And so what we finally have is that whatever average stress we are calculating, that can be assumed to be uniform over this entire line segment. Okay. And so we will learn about what is that average shear stress. In this case, we can assume that uniform average shear stress, and what is the value of that uniform average shear stress for a beam cross section. We'll discuss about that in next class. Okay, so regarding the shear stresses in beams, so we have discussed about the slipping taking place between planes under action of transverse loads, and then we found out what is the horizontal force which is acting along the longitudinal direction delta H in terms of the V and Q and I, and then we found what is shear flow Q, so which is delta H by delta X, which is VQ by I, and then we found what is tau average, which is VQ by IT. Okay, so we'll discuss tomorrow's class about the shear stress distribution